Rugby runs its leagues very similarly to football, with the league system being a bit of a pyramid, with Premiership Rugby being on top, the Championship being below, National 1, National 2, and so on and so on, with promotion and relegation for all the leagues. Now, this system has many pros, like upward mobility for teams, and for the most part, an even playing field for teams to rise and fall depending on how they're run. So, within reason, clubs are able to chase their ambitions to their heart's content, and are seemingly encouraged to, but an unintended consequence of this system is that although this rugby pyramid structure encourages teams to be ambitious and aim as high as they can, I believe it actually hinders and discourages young players in this country from being ambitious and upwardly mobile. So let's talk about it. So what do I mean by this? Well, I believe with a system that focuses on clubs doing well as individual entities, with promotion and relegation being the main drivers for clubs during the season, you miss out on what systems like the URC have, as well as Kiwi and Aussie Rugby, where they're tiered systems with no relegation or promotion, and are more like facilitators for player development, with different levels of play allowing players to select how ambitious they want to be within that hierarchy. For example, if you have ambitions of playing professional rugby in, say, New Zealand, you need to do well for your club, and you need to probably be playing Premier Grade Rugby regularly to get brought into regional rugby that leads you higher up the ladder, and so on and so on, until finally, if you're good enough, you get to be an All Black and life is good. Ben Smith being a good example of this trajectory. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, the only difference between our system and, let's say, the Kiwis is that there's no promotion and relegation, and that Ben Smith story could possibly happen in England as well. And you're right, but there are a few unseen hurdles that a player like him would have to go through for that to happen in this country. The first thing being that the self-interest of clubs in England compared to New Zealand are completely different, as in New Zealand the coaches and club want to see you progress because you being a success story benefits them as a club and their reputation as a breeding ground for success. Whereas over here, I have first-hand seen players be guilted and talked out of their ambitions and into staying places that, if I'm brutally honest, are beneath them skill-wise out of fear of letting coaches or even teammates down. As one of the downsides of community rugby in this country is sadly the community of it all. People feel a way about you leaving for so-called greener pastures, rightly or wrongly, and it feels very personal over here, especially the lower down you go in the leagues, as from National 2 and up, it's all semi-professional, but from level 5 down, it's a bit different. And even though there's money being exchanged probably at all the levels, the lines are a lot more blurred, and what's considered good practice ethically for player loyalty or player progression will vary wildly from team to team. And I believe this is a massive issue in our game, as we need more avenues and environments for players with ambition in this country, as, to be frank, it just isn't a priority here. We don't have the elite school systems of the countries like New Zealand and South Africa. What we have is a lot of posh public schools with good rugby programs and a few great ace colleges trying to bridge the gap. But there are only so many of these, and it still leaves a massive amount of players falling through the cracks of all that, who don't have the avenues to pursue their ambitions. And this is especially so in young adults. Now, I'm only speaking from my own personal experience, but from what I've witnessed, too much is down to who you know and luck in this sport. If you're dropped from an academy at any level, under 16, under 18, senior academy, what is there for you? What are your next steps? You're on your own. If you don't go to uni, which is its own separate can of worms, you just have to make a decision and commit to a team at a level you think you'll be good enough to play and progress. And some people aim too high and get stuck in twos teams after being promised the world, and some people aim too low and miss out on opportunities that they should get. And it's all a bit messy and chaotic. So what's the solution? Well, I have one that I think can work without too much change in infrastructure, and that is to have more feeder clubs to higher leagues. So what do I mean by a feeder club? Well, a feeder club's purpose is to provide players to another club in a higher league, with the club in the higher league contributing funding and support to the lower club to keep this process going, or at the very least oversight and guidance. I believe that if you have more clubs collaborating like this, English rugby could have the best of both worlds, with places dedicated to giving young players a platform to take their rugby seriously, whilst also maintaining the club-first mentality that we have now, with promotion and relegation. As I believe due to the massive social aspect of the game in this country, I think that having dedicated quote-unquote seriouser rugby clubs would take a lot of the guesswork out for people and allow them to pursue their desires to their heart's content, without fear of judgment for maybe taking things themselves or rugby too seriously. A lot of Cinderella stories in rugby involve more luck than any kind of foresight or system, which full credit to those who make it in unorthodox ways, but I believe we need to do more, and those stories need to become less the exception and more the rule. And I believe it could even help bigger clubs with their loan system, as at least when I was coming through, players were loaned to lower league teams and not really given much guidance, or used as tackle bags and as cheap labour at their higher level clubs. Whereas ideally, having a competitive, somewhat professional environment for young and ambitious players to be important and develop could be a great thing. Now, obviously not everyone in every league could do this, as you'd need to have the catchment area, the connections and the facilities. But a few examples of teams who could give this a real go, who already have multiple teams playing multiple levels, down south, sorry to Midlands and Northern peeps, but these are the ones that I know, would be clubs who have big history, big backing and loads of players. Your Richmonds, who seem to have 70 people show up to pre-season every year, London Irish, London Scottish, who have amateur and semi-pro teams coming up the leagues, Ealing Trial Finders, who have the best amateur facilities I've seen, and a really easy train connection to loads of places around Greater London, as well as the city itself. I believe that if clubs are smart, they could advertise and implement this system very easily, and be progressive and progressing on two fronts, and have the self-interest that English rugby innately has, whilst also having it work in their favour. Our infrastructure in this sport is most similar to France, but it is without the socialist funding structure that France has, which has allowed them to have the best two-tier professional system in the world. So if we're going to be the same as them, whilst not doing the same things as them, we've got to get creative. And following a football-esque model of pyramid league without embracing the player movement that should come with that isn't correct. Speaking from my own personal experience, my ambitions now aren't what they used to be. I'm 28. And I've been at the club I've been at now for 4 or 5 years. And my ambition now takes the form in dreams of my team's success and wanting to be part of it. But this wasn't always the case. And I wish that when I was between 18 and 23 and still chasing the dream, there were more places where it felt like there was a pathway and not just supposed links and hearsay. There are clubs innovating, such as Coventry with their combine scheme, and hopefully more variations and innovations will be seen in the future. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Signed NGJ.